so we'll get started. Today's webinar is on food and mood and discussing neurotransmitters and key nutrients that can impact our mood. Most of you probably know, but today's webinar is put on by Aligned Modern Health. Aligned Modern Health is an integrative health and wellness center that is located in downtown Chicago, as well as the surrounding suburbs, and even across state lines via telehealth for functional medicine. We have 4 core services: chiropractic physical medicine, acupuncture, clinical massage therapy, and the team that I'm a part of, functional medicine and clinical nutrition. At Aligned, we take an integrative approach where we treat across modalities to co-manage cases and get to the root cause of why patients feel the way they feel to get them feeling better. So before we get started, I do want to share a little bit about myself. My name is Dr. Lexi Mykert. I practice out of our Orland Park and Park Ridge offices. I also treat Illinois patients via telehealth. My background is in chiropractic medicine, though I do not practice any physical medicine. I strictly practice functional medicine. I obtained my doctorate from National University of Health Sciences in Lombard, Illinois. I received my master's in functional medicine and human nutrition from University of Western States. And I got my undergrad from University of Illinois. I have a passion on women's health, autoimmune disease, GI disorders, unsolved disorders, trying to figure out why a person feels the way they feel, and of course, mental health. So I'm excited to bring you today's webinar. So let's dive in. So when we talk about mood, mood is a temporary state of being. So as this cartoon depicts, sometimes we just wake up on the wrong side of the bed and you might feel a certain way and not really know why. Versus an emotion or a feeling, a mood is usually not specific. Something typically does not trigger our mood, and it could be an unknown reason why you're feeling the way you're feeling. Usually moods are less specific and less intense than a feeling or emotion. Typically, when we're talking about mood, they have a negative or a positive connotation. I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm grumpy, I'm excited. Usually it could be typical moods. We usually lump into the 2 categories, good or bad, and most of us want to hang out in that good mood as much as we can. So when we talk about mood, we do have to take into account all the different things that can impact our mood. As a functional medicine provider, I am very passionate about overall health status. If you're in chronic pain, if you're dealing with digestive issues, depending on where a female is at in her menstrual cycle, our overall health status can impact our mood. The other big factor that can impact our mood is environment or temperature. The sun is finally out in Chicago today. A lot of us may be in a good mood just because of that sunshine, versus middle of our long winter when it's dark and dreary and cold. Negative moods seem to be a theme. Exercise. We'll talk a little bit about endorphins in a few slides, but exercise can either really help our mood by making us feel more positive and energetic. Not enough exercise can lead to a negative mood. On the flip side, too much exercise can be a stressor on our body and also lead to a negative mood. Hormonal factors. This applies both to males and females. When there's hormones that are out of balance, you may feel in a negative mood. And then particularly for females, we worry about things like premenstrual syndrome. Those few days before your menstrual cycle begins is often associated with the negative mood. It's extremely common. Just because it's common doesn't mean it's normal, and doesn't mean it's something us ladies have to deal with. So that's something to explore. Then on the flip side, menopausal females often deal with negative moods. Again, common but not normal. Social economic factors, current life events definitely can impact our mood. One thing I always recommend to my patients: don't look at stressful things before bed. Turn off the news way before bed, because that definitely can trigger a bad mood that can lead to insomnia. Supplementation. Again, in the functional medicine arena, there's a lot we could do from a supplementation standpoint to better mood. whether indirectly or directly. There's certain nutrients that could lead deficiencies in nutrients that could lead to anxiety and depression, things like vitamin D or omega-3, which we could actually do some lab testing and see where your levels are at. And then there's other therapeutic interventions, and this is where at Alliant we take that holistic integrative approach. Things like acupuncture, massage therapy can better mood. Genetics definitely can dictate mood. Now, with genetics, it's not the be and end all. If you have a history of mood disorders, that does not mean you are predisposed to that, but it's something that you should share with your provider and maybe part of your story of why you're feeling a specific way. And then, of course, diet and food. That's why y'all are here today, for us to talk about what food choices can help us better our mood. So in order to have a conversation on mood, we have to take a step back and look at the drivers of why humans feel a certain way. And when we do this, we're looking at something called neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters communicate with hormones in our brain and can have an overall impact on our overall health and wellness. You can think of neurotransmitters like a hormone of your brain. They are powerful chemical signals that help regulate both our physical and emotional health processes. So from having sharp mental acuity to maintaining physical homeostasis, things like blood pressure and our respiration and our pain receptors, neurotransmitters have a role in all of those things. When we are concentrated and focused, usually we have a positive mood, then we'll feel directed, motivated, more vibrant, better outlook on life. Versus on the flip side, if our neurotransmitters are out of balance, you may feel stressed, sluggish, or out of control, which is a really bad feeling related to mood. So diving further into the neurotransmitter conversation, there are hundreds different neurotransmitters. So today we're just going to focus on 8 that directly impact our mood. The first being adrenaline. Adrenaline, also known as epinephrine, is our fight or flight response. Adrenaline extremely important in life-saving situations. So you're on a safari and running from a lion, that's an adrenaline response that we want to have. Adrenaline is a negative situation when it's firing when we should be in a calm state. That can impact anxiety and our mood, of course. On the flip side, we're looking at something called noradrenaline or norepinephrine. This is our focus and concentration neurotransmitter. The pharmaceutical industry has actually used this in certain medications, medications that can treat ADHD or modulate depression. So really important for overall focus and concentration. The next neurotransmitter we're going to be looking at today is something called dopamine. Dopamine is our pleasure neurotransmitter. It's associated with being released after exercise, intercourse. It makes us feel good and happy and vibrant. On the flip side, serotonin is what is responsible for us being happy. Serotonin helps regulate mood. A deficiency or imbalance of serotonin is linked to seasonal affective disorder, anxiety, and depression. The next neurotransmitter is GABA. GABA is an inhibitory neurotransmitter. What that means, it blocks signals of anxiousness to help put us in a state of feeling calm. Again, imbalances of GABA are associated with anxiety and depression and irritability. GABA is something we can actually supplement with, of course, under the care of your provider, but is something that could be used in regulation of insomnia and sleep habits. Acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is our memory and cognition neurotransmitter. In order to learn and store memories, we need the right balance of acetylcholine. Acetylcholine deficiencies are linked to Alzheimer's disease. The next one is glutamate. Glutamate, again, is linked to learning and memory. You may be familiar with something called glutamine, which is a very common over-the-counter supplement that people often take for gut health. It is the precursor to make glutamate, so that helps us again with that memory and that focus. And then as I briefly touched on with exercise, endorphins. Endorphins are that feel-good response from doing certain activities, exercise being one of them. Endorphins are interesting because they are also used as a pain reliever. So again, thinking about our chronic pain patients, releasing endorphins can be therapeutic, but often chronic pain patients can't exercise or have a fear of exercise due to their pain. So finding that balance is extremely important. So then to dive further into why do all these matter and how do they directly impact our mood? So as I went through that list, I did mention a handful of diseases like Alzheimer's, ADHD, anxiety, and depression that can be linked to neurotransmitter imbalance. But besides those, we also see things like migraines, fibromyalgia, other autoimmune conditions, hormone dysfunctions, insomnia, disordered eating can be related to neurotransmitter imbalances. And then we'll talk more about this shortly, but irritable bowel, our gut and our brains communicate with each other. So often digestive issues can be related to neurotransmitter imbalances. Now today we're going to take a deeper dive into 3 of these neurotransmitters: serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine. So serotonin is one of the most common contributors to mood imbalances. Serotonin is important for us to feel happy and to keep sustained happiness and not feel that sadness, anxiety, and depression. When we have low serotonin, it is not uncommon to feel irritable, have panic attacks, low energy, sleeping problems, or waking up feeling unrefreshed or like you didn't sleep at all. Hormonal imbalances, so that's where that PMS, PMDD, or perimenopause, menopausal mood changes come into play. Reduced libido can go hand in hand with that. Serotonin is extremely important for that. And then dopamine and norepinephrine. So dopamine and norepinephrine also responsible for mood balance, and they make us feel good. So again, as a reminder, that dopamine is that pleasure center of our brain. Norepinephrine helps with that calming aspect. So that balance is really important. So overall, we can attribute these two to motivation, energy, interest, drive, desire to do things that make us happy. It's associated with falling in love. So dopamine is something that's released when you fall in love with a partner or during intercourse or after intercourse. Exercise. So again, endurance athletes are often chasing that dopamine response, listening to music. But on the flip side, if we don't have enough of these 2 neurotransmitters, it may be hard to finish a task. So again, thinking focus and concentration come into play. Lack of energy, lack of desire or drive. So let's talk food and how it impacts us making these neurotransmitters. As a functional medicine doctor, in my practice, I have 3 basic pillars of treatment. The first is food. Second would be nutraceuticals, vitamins, supplements that can be beneficial for treatment strategies, as well as lifestyle habits is a third. So food, always first, and we could use food as medicine. At Aligned, we do have clinical nutritionists and registered dietitians that are functionally medicine trained to help implement, because we could sit here and go through these next few slides and I could tell you what to eat, but we're all human and it's not that simple. And sometimes you need some extra help. So that's where our clinical nutrition team is really great at helping make these changes actually feasible for your lifestyle. So we have approximately 37 trillion cells in our body, and food sends signals to all of them. So food is extremely powerful to give positive health signals or can impact us. So eating the right foods is crucial. Our gut is responsible for breaking down our food into macro and micronutrients. Macronutrients are fats, proteins, carbohydrates, versus the micronutrients, think vitamin, minerals, antioxidants, phytonutrients. One thing that needs to be noted here is that we are what we digest and absorb, not what we eat. So you could eat all the right foods, but if you have GI issues or something like celiac disease that impacts your absorption of nutrients, that's something clinically significant, and maybe we have to talk different nutraceuticals to complement a healthy diet or work on gut healing tendencies to help absorptions. We could have a full weekend-long seminar on the gut-brain connection. So this is going to be a very small snippet on gut-brain connection. It's a super fascinating field of study that shows the bidirectional relationship between our gut and our brain. So our brain is part of our nervous system, but our gut actually has its own nervous system called the enteric nervous system, which is contained within the gut walls. Now, when we think about this gut-brain connection, of course, it's linked to digestion. It helps keep normal, healthy digestion, prevent GI upset, things like bloat or bowel movement changes, but it also helps our mood. We make some neurotransmitters like serotonin within our gut. It helps with our cognition, so that focus, and our overall health. To take this a step further, we also could think about the bugs or the bacteria, our microbiome, that is located within our colon. Those bacteria should help us. Now, again, there's issues that lead to imbalances of those bacteria, and that's something you could work on to optimize your health. But the bacteria within our digestive tract actually are responsible for helping break down food, regulate our immune system, actually can help protect against specific diseases, and help produce vitamins, those micronutrients we just mentioned, that we need to make neurotransmitters. Things like B12, thiamine, riboflavin, vitamin K. There was a study published on PubMed that showed reduced vagal nerve functioning in IBS and Crohn's patients. So those are two digestive disorders or diseases. And the vagal nerve is one of two connections between the brain and the gut. So it just shows when you deal with GI upset or impacts, that can impact your mood and your overall well-being. So let's talk more nitty-gritty of how do we make neurotransmitters and what can we do with our diet to keep these things in check. The first neurotransmitter we are going to discuss is something called serotonin, like we mentioned. Serotonin is made from an amino acid. You may be familiar with amino acids. They're from protein. The amino acid we care about with serotonin is tryptophan. Tryptophan converts into serotonin, but it can only do this if we have omega-3s, zinc, magnesium, folate, B6 and B7, as well as vitamin C. In order to make dopamine and norepinephrine, we need something called tyrosine. Tyrosine, again, is an amino acid, which will be found in complete protein sources. Tyrosine converts to dopamine, which then converts to norepinephrine with the help of some nutrients. Iron, B3, B6, B9, common theme, these B vitamins are so important for mood stability, vitamin C, and copper. So what can you eat to make these? So let's talk further into that. Vitamin Bs are very rich in salmon, eggs, legumes such as chickpeas and lentils. We have our leafy greens. Nutritional yeast is a great plant-based source of B vitamins. So if you follow a vegan or a plant-based diet, it's a great thing to add. Nutritional yeast is really easy to like top other meals. So if you want to throw it on top of avocado toast or in some yogurt or smoothie, or even like on top of pasta, it's a really good way to add some extra vitamins into what you're eating. Whole grains, if you tolerate grains, sweet potatoes, almonds, and avocado. Now, these are like the biggest hitters with getting these nutrients, but you have to understand when we talk food medicine and dietary changes, not everyone tolerates these foods. So focus on the foods on this list that you know you tolerate well. Vitamin C, think bright orange, bright colored produce. Things like papaya, bell peppers, strawberries, some greens like broccoli and Brussels sprouts, kale, and then cabbage, pineapple, cauliflower. Omega-3s. Omega-3s are rich in raw nuts and seeds, in particular walnuts and flaxseed, specific type of seafoods like sardines, so smaller fish, really rich in omega-3s, a wild caught salmon, a grass-fed beef, and then again, the Brussels sprouts and cauliflower. Those are pretty power foods. Omega-3s are very easy to supplement if you do not get enough in your diet. And they're actually the lab tests we can run in your blood that will quantify out your omega-3s. So we could tell, are you getting enough from your diet or do we need a supplement? Zinc, really rich in a well-sourced beef, spinach, asparagus, and mushrooms. Iron, leafy greens, things like spinach, this chard, beet greens, collard, and then some like herbs and spices, parsley, turmeric, which is also anti-inflammatory. And of course, animal products, the beef again, some seafoods rich in iron. There's two different types of iron. There's heme iron and non-heme iron. Non-heme iron would be everything in this list, all these plant-based sources of iron. If you're consuming a plant-based source of iron, I recommend consuming it with a source of vitamin C because that enhances absorption. And like we just saw from making those neurotransmitters, we need vitamin C anyways. So that would be a powerful neurotransmitter supporting combination. Copper is a mineral, really rich in some nuts and seeds, in particular sesame, cashew, also the mushrooms. Fun fact there, the copper and the zinc are important to keep in a balance, and mushrooms contain both of those, so great to eat that way to increase your copper and zinc absorption and content. Spinach, kale, asparagus, and then magnesium. We see some leafy greens, pumpkin seeds. Pumpkin seeds are also rich in zinc, so again, that would be a little bit cross there to get both of those nutrients. Another food that's really rich in magnesium is actually chocolate. It's often why menstruating females will crave chocolate right in their PMS period, that time before they get their menstrual cycle, because magnesium can help with hormone imbalance and mood. So to take this a step further, I did already mention the importance of a healthy gut to support digestion and absorption, so you reap the benefits of eating a clean diet. But things you could do to complement that further are eating fermented foods. Things like pickles, sauerkraut, kimchi, kombuchas, it's not too high in sugar, can help improve your gut bacteria. Collagen and bone broth, they're both rich in that glutamine that I mentioned earlier, so really great source for gut health, but also neurotransmitters. When we talk about eating, this is a very personalized approach. So timing of eating does vary person to person, but in general, intermittent fasting is very trendy and popular right now. I will say I do not recommend it across the board for everyone. If it is something you're interested in pursuing, I do recommend working with someone who specializes in timed eating so you're aware of the benefits and how to utilize it to your advantage. But for most people, they benefit from small, frequent meals. And when we eat small meals, we do need to be cognizant of what our meal contains. I always like my patients to consume a meal that has a fat, a protein, and a carbohydrate. So all three of those main macronutrients. A snack, I like at least 2 out of the 3 of those. This helps control your blood sugar, which stabilizes your mood and actually helps your stress response, your cortisol. So that will help your mood as well. It will also help you feel satisfied. So feel hungry or feel full longer, avoid that hunger crash or feeling hangry, that irritability that happens with missed meals. Eating seasonally. When we eat seasonally, the produce is most nutrient dense. As we all know, groceries are outrageously expensive these days, so eating seasonally helps pack the most benefit from your groceries and the produce that you're eating. And then as we mentioned, amino acids. So that tryptophan, we need to make serotonin, is rich in foods like turkey, that gets its rap for why we feel tired after Thanksgiving dinner, eggs, nuts and seeds, and salmon. And when we pair that with a carbohydrate, we do get max absorption and again helps control our blood sugar, which is very important for mood stability. So that is the end of our webinar today. I am going to open up the floor to questions. If you do have any questions, please place them in the Q&A box. All right, so we do have a couple of questions. One is regarding bone broth. So is bone broth good to drink, homemade or store-bought? I always recommend homemade, but not always practical because it can be very time consuming. So if you can make it at home and freeze it, that's wonderful. But if you need to do store-bought, Kettle and Fire is a great brand that you could do that works for most people. Another question, this is a great question. Can we test for neurotransmitter imbalances? And if so, how? Yes, we can. So I do a couple different approaches in my practice. When I see a new patient and I suspect mood imbalances related to neurotransmitters, I have a questionnaire that I'll ask. It's something called a neurotransmitter questionnaire assessment. And what it does, it breaks down the different types of neurotransmitters. So when I review it, it gives me an inkling what type of neurotransmitter I need to be supporting. And I like that form because it's something I could give patients every couple of months, or if they're feeling really good one day, we'll do that form and see how it compares to their bad days. There is lab testing. There's a urine testing that I run sometimes. Now, a caveat with that, if you're taking any anxiety or depression or ADHD medications that can impact your neurotransmitter, that testing is not accurate. And a lot of patients do come to me already on one of those mood stabilizing medications. So that's why I like the assessment versus the test. There's another question regarding, can we get some of these nutrients from a vitamin supplement and pros and cons of a daily multivitamin? Very patient specific. So I don't believe in protocols, and I do believe that everyone's needs are unique and specific. Some of us tolerate specific forms of a vitamin. Some of us may not tolerate those forms. So some people, usually a multivitamin is safe to do, but if someone has too much vitamin B12 or the right form or the wrong form, it can actually increase anxiety. So yes, most people can benefit from a multivitamin that's well sourced, doesn't have fillers in it, doesn't have other junk in it. So quality definitely matters. Food where we can, and then doing some lab testing to fill in the gaps to see if it's enough. There's a question about when to take specific supplements if you're doing it. So again, personalized. It asks about magnesium, which we talked about as one of those cofactors to make neurotransmitters. It depends on the type. So there's different types of magnesium that have different purposes. Some magnesiums I like before bed, some I like in the mornings. So that would be a provider-specific question to ask. In general, vitamins that are fat soluble, so think vitamin A, D, E, and K, those should be with food, a fat-rich meal. Other vitamins usually can be taken with or without food, really patient dependent on nausea, time of day, things like that. I love this question for overall health. Somebody asked about if someone makes these focused changes in their diet, what do they expect when what improvement should be seen? So when I treat patients, I look at two different things, subjective and objective findings. How do you feel in the day in, the day out? And I like to see my patients every few weeks. So I get to monitor that because I often hear patients say, oh my gosh, I forgot I had that symptom. And you just reminded me, thanks, but I'm no longer dealing with that. I also have a health assessment questionnaire different from the neurotransmitter one that I just mentioned that I have patients fill out before every visit, and we can compare. So we get to see that objective data, and then to take it a step further, improvements in lab work. So as lab improves your dietary changes, it can be very motivating to make the continue on, because once you start feeling better from dietary changes, it gets a lot easier to stay put with it. What about dairy? This person says they love dairy. How does that impact mood? I love dairy too. But dairy is a hard one. A lot of people don't respond well to dairy, and it can lead to GI, digestive upset. And like we just said, that gut-brain axis is so significant. So that's a very specific one of how you respond to dairy. If you tolerate it well, there's arguably a place for well-sourced dairy in your diet. If you don't tolerate it, that's something to explore. Question about B12 shots. So yeah, we talked about the importance of various different types of B vitamins. Definitely B12 shots are very trendy and very well available. Intramuscular injections can be great for patients that have poor absorption. So if you have those GI issues that we mentioned and you're not absorbing your nutrients, an injection, as long as it's well sourced, would be great. Second to that, I like sublingual B12s, which means underneath the vein underneath your vein, or the vein underneath your tongue is your sublingual vein. Absorption is great through there. There's a handful of questions about like dosing of supplements and the amount to take. That is something I would strongly recommend working with a provider for. So like I mentioned at Aligned, we're all about blood work and dosing, because there's never a one size fits all. Our body size, our digestion, our overall health can dictate what dosing we need. So that's something that you can work with the provider. And bouncing off that, we do offer free 15-minute consultations. So if I don't get to one of your questions, or if they're more personalized, that'd be better for a one-on-one conversation. You could call the number on the screen and set up a free consult with myself or any of my colleagues, and we could talk more personal nitty-gritty of what we can do to help you. And bouncing off that, there's like a question about what tests do I ask for my doctor to run. I strongly recommend functional medicine because we do all the tests, but if you're working with your primary care doctor, your red blood cells, your white blood cells, iron, B12, folate, vitamin D are very common insurance-based labs you could ask a primary care doc for. There's a question related to, can all these things impact joint pain? Absolutely. So like we mentioned, mood can be impacted by like those endorphins, which can be a pain reliever. But then on the flip side, if you're in a state of chronic pain that's inflammatory, which can increase stress, which can impact our gut, which can impact our neurotransmitters. So very indirectly, but definitely that's why we love holistic approaches to your health, because any part of your body that may feel off definitely can be impacted by other areas. You guys are great with questions. Thank you for all these. Somebody asked if there's vitamin C in oranges, lemon, and limes. Absolutely. Citrus fruit, great. Awesome. All right, and then the last one I think I'm going to answer is related to tapering off medication and shifting to functional medicine. So as a functional medicine provider, my background is in chiropractic. I am not a prescribing physician, so it is not within my scope of practice to have a patient come off medication, but I'd love to co-manage. So that is something that I recommend breaching the topic with your prescribing doctor. And then what we will end up doing is, as you feel better, and I don't recommend coming off the medication then starting functional medicine, I recommend starting functional medicine first. So we start to optimize your health, and then you'll be in a better spot if your provider thinks it's a good time for you to taper off. So it's not mutually exclusive. I love when patients come wherever they're at in their health journey to start their functional medicine journey. So I really appreciate all your time today for tuning in and joining our digital doc series on food. Like I mentioned, if you want a free consult, if we didn't get to your question and want more one-on-one attention, please reach out or visit us online. Again, my name is Dr. Lexi Micra, and I practice out of Orland Park, Park Ridge, and telehealth. Thank you so much.